There are many things about Japan that simply don't match up with the fact that this is one of the most successful countries in the world. Take, for instance, the lie of the land. Three-quarters of Japan is mountainous. The mountains are not often that high, but are almost always steep. It's awkward, difficult territory, difficult to build on, difficult to farm, difficult to move through. Then there's a particular kind of Japanese mountain. There are 80 active volcanoes in the country. The results of volcanic eruptions are something that people often have to deal with. The same goes for another kind of natural disaster: earthquakes. And it's not just the land beneath that's unkind. It's also the sky above. In an average year, there will be 30 severe storms, called typhoons. And the problems don't just stop with geography. They're in Japan's history, too. "50 years ago, the country was in ruins at the end of the Second World War. But in stark contrast, against all these odds, the picture today is one of the most modern to be seen anywhere in the world. In the cities especially, by most reckonings, this is a view of economic success. With a population of 125 million people, Japan has swept towards the top of the World League table in science, industry, education and business. The label "Made in Japan" has become a household phrase in almost every country in the world. This series will be looking for some of the answers to the vital questions: how have the Japanese done it, against all the odds? We'll be featuring the region of Kansai, where you'll find many of the problems that faced Japan in the 1990s and some very big projects that attempt to solve them. In the rest of this program, we're going to look at two of them: an energy project and one to do with transport. Squeezing transport links into the difficult landscape has always been a challenge to Japanese technology and engineering. Faced with this sort of terrain, technology has been pushed towards ambitious solutions. For the last 30 years, there's been enough wealth in the country to pay for these projects. The first high-speed links forged through the difficult landscape were the railways. The main line runs from the island of Hokkaido through the longest rail tunnel in the world to Honshu, the biggest of the four main islands. From Tokyo, it plows through the massive sprawl of cities that runs along the coast of Honshu. Finally, it crosses by tunnel to Kyushu, the southernmost island. It's the 2,300-kilometer backbone that welds the country together. Over 2,000 kilometers of this is covered by the high-speed bullet train. latest generation of bullet travels at 270 kilometers an hour, controlled by computer, with only 7 minutes between one train and the next. Its arrival at each station is timed to the split second. Ultra-modern technology often goes hand in hand with the more traditional ways of doing things. The driver wears white gloves. The conductor bows. This state-of-the-art train is crucial in a heavily populated country like Japan. Over 275 million journeys are made on the bullet every year. There is no better way of shifting so many people so efficiently.
It's spacious, clean, and the ride's very comfortable.
Most of the time I travel by plane. This is my first time on the new bullet. It feels very fast, better than I expected.
Yet in spite of all the daring rail and road schemes, congestion in the cities gets worse and worse. In Kansai, the region we're featuring throughout the series, you can't miss it. For hours on end, there are gigantic snarl-ups. Kansai is right in the middle of a 900-kilometer-long strip where the cities and towns almost run one into the other, one of the longest built-up areas in the world. The scheme to get round this problem is an ingenious one. It involves building a new road route starting from the cities of Osaka and Kobe to the islands of Awaji and Shikoku. And eventually, so goes the grand design, to the island of Kyushu, creating a 400-kilometer-long bypass around the great straggle of cities on the coast of Honshu Island. Yet another link that binds this island country together. One of the links is already in place. This bridge across one of the inlets was opened in 1985. 2 stretches of sea still wait for the crossing to be made. This is one of them, the Akashi Straits. The bridge here will be 4 kilometers long, the longest single span in the world. Government and business combine to spend huge amounts of money on projects like this. But it's not just a bridge that's seen as the end product. Jobs are created, new skills are learned, and the companies will use the experience to bid for similar projects abroad. One of the senior engineers on the bridge is Mr. Okumoto. He has bridges in his bones.
Well, for the people like me working on a really big bridge, we could look forward to showing it to our children and saying, "Your father built that." When you know that something you've made will stand there for years and years, you get a real kick out of it. And the pride you take in your work actually makes you all work harder. Ever since the Second World War, our parents have put a lot of effort into catching up and overtaking Britain, the United States, and the rest of the world. It's their ability to work hard and put up with hardship that's brought us to where we are now.
The engineers have had to cope with Japan's tough geography. First, in order to make it earthquake-proof, the foundations had to be driven to an unusually great depth beneath the seabed. Second, the sea currents here are particularly fast and dangerous, which meant extra strength in the way the foundations were designed. Third, the bridge would have to contend with typhoon force winds of 130 kilometers per hour, Again then, extra strength in the structure of the bridge itself. Engineer Okumoto is in no two minds about the crucial new transport link he's helping to create.
To make a long bridge connecting Kobe on the main island to Awaji Island has been everyone's lifelong dream for more than 100 years. This bridge is going to be of great importance to the local people and a real step forward in the technology of bridge building.
The bridge will span one of the busiest stretches of sea around Japan. "1,400 ships pass through every day on their way to and from the port of Kobe, the largest in Japan. Japan's ports are absolutely vital to the country's economy. Out go the billions of pounds worth of high-tech exports. In comes practically every single raw material the country needs. The largest area of waterfront is usually taken up with the processing of one raw material above all the others. And that's oil, every drop of which comes from abroad. It's Japan's prime source of energy. Japan would desperately like to cut back on this need to import so much oil. And in Kansai, a project has just been finished which helps to do just that. It lies across the mountains to the north of the port of Kobe. This is Wakasa Bay, one of those rare spots in Japan where remote and unspoilt are the right words to describe the landscape. Or at least they used to be. Because here's where a huge nuclear power project has been sited. Not just one nuclear power station either, but 5 of them. The distance between Wakasa Bay's power stations and the 10 million people in Osaka and Kobe is just 75 kilometers. Wakasa Bay is on Japan's northern coast. The sea here has some of the richest fishing grounds and some of the busiest fishing villages in the country. With so little room between the mountains and the sea, it's hardly surprising that it's a very different place compared to the cities and industrial regions of the coastline to the south. In locating the nuclear power stations in this area, the power companies knew that they would face opposition. The Japanese eat fish for breakfast, lunch and dinner. There have been many scandals about the contamination and pollution of the sea around Japan by industries. As a result, the people's concern for their environment has risen. So when the power companies started to plan the projects, the government mounted a huge publicity campaign to convince the local people that the power stations would be safe. They also offered the locals cheap electricity, new roads, schools and housing as part of the deal. Most people went along with the scheme, thinking it would benefit the area overall.
I think it's all right, as long as the power stations operate correctly and safely. It's okay for them to come here, so long as they pay their taxes and help to get the area developed. We need better roads here and more industry, so that there are more opportunities for everyone.
In the latest power station, the safety precautions are probably as tight as they can possibly be. In an exact replica of the control room, there is regular training in the emergency procedure for shutting down the nuclear reactor in the event of a problem. Just across the harbour from the power station, the deal struck with this village, Shiraki, included the building of a road tunnel that connected them with the outside world for the very first time. Mr. Nakagawa has lived in and fished from Shiraki all his life. He thinks that on balance, the village is benefiting from finding itself suddenly 100 meters from a nuclear power station.
They made a lot of promises that they would make improvements in the village. Things will become more convenient. Our lifestyles will get better. It's the same story you hear everywhere. Since they've built the road, the journey that took 5 hours now only takes 20 minutes by car. That's a big difference.
In summer, the beaches of Wakasa Bay are popular with tourists. Some of them are surprisingly casual about swimming next to 5 nuclear power stations.
Well, it's never directly affected me or anything, so I guess it's all right.
In the car on the way down here, we were joking about how our hair would start falling out. But we just joked about it and left it at that.
What will I do if I go bald?
But for the people who live and work here all the year round, the question of safety is a very real one. Mr. Nakagawa, at least, is in no doubt about why his village was chosen to host a power station.
These things always seem to be built in remote areas where very few people live. So there's no doubt that they're dangerous. There are other areas they could have gone to, like Osaka Bay and Kobe Bay. But they don't build them in places like that. So there must be something up. Why do they have to come here? Our village is small. It wouldn't matter much if people left our village, or if the village wasn't here at all. We can't beat the big cities. In places like Wakasa Bay, it must sometimes seem that the march of progress is unstoppable, no matter what the price. The plan is for a total of 52 nuclear stations throughout the country. True enough, in a country with so many odds stacked against it, big problems need big solutions. And Japan's economic success has given it the means to do this. The question is, how far to go and where to draw the line? Osaka Bay, around the cities of Osaka and Kobe, is the biggest center of industry in Kansai, the region we're featuring in this series. It's one of the best places in Japan to find the answer to the question, what does a Japanese industrial region look like and how does it work? The beginning of the answer lies not on land, but out at sea in Osaka Bay. A constant procession of ships brings a vast range of goods and raw materials in from abroad. In a country like Japan, which has practically no natural resources of its own, these sea routes converging on the ports of Osaka and Kobe are the region's lifelines.
The waterfront areas handle the processing of the list of raw materials that feed the Japanese economy. The list is a long one. Oil, 99.7% from overseas. Coal, 99.8. Copper, 98.7. Iron ore, 99.8. Even 3/4 of the country's wood is shipped in from abroad. Just behind the waterfront stands the city itself. Osaka is the second city in Japan after the capital, Tokyo. With a population of nearly 9 million, it's the largest in the Kansai region. Here are the headquarters of many of the big Japanese banks and corporations. Every evening of the week, Sundays included, the city's non-stop entertainment and shopping districts come to life. Electric City is the district of Osaka given over to the worship of electronics. The latest advance in every field of gadgetry shows up here, and the competition between the companies is cutthroat. Japan has staked its very existence on taking the high-tech road. In Osaka's Electric City, it hits you right between the eyes. The story behind this amazing selection of goods on sale in the hi-fi district begins, however, in quite a different sort of place. It's half an hour's drive from the glittering lights of the city centre. It lies to one side of the massive motorway that runs round the outskirts. Every large city in Japan has an area like this. It's the workshop district, where the hard graft behind the glitter goes on. "90% of Japanese companies are small. This is the bottom end of the production ladder, where the might of Japanese industry begins. Mrs. Yamazaki works with her husband from a converted garage where they make plastic parts. Their daily routine is for Mr. Yamazaki to begin work in the early hours and for his wife to take over after having done the household chores. This two-person business is the start of a process that leads on a long way from here. The next stage is the daily delivery of what they made to the company Mr. Yamazaki supplies. It's a bigger one, run by two brothers, the Kawatas. The Kawatas are the next step up in the production chain. There's a tight human web that binds one company to another in Japan. It's the lifeblood of the whole system.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the small hand-to-mouth companies like ourselves keep the Japanese economy going.
With 18 employees, they make a range of products like the tops of car batteries and their own sports equipment. Another line is safety goggles. When things are really busy, the eldest son, who's still at university, comes in to give a hand. "60% of Japanese goods come from small companies like this.
Business here operates like a pyramid. At the top, there are the big corporations, and below them, supporting them, are the medium and the small-sized businesses. We are somewhere in the middle.
The Kawatas build up trust with their customers over a very long period. It's something they have in common with all Japanese companies, large and small.
Our number one customer is a company whose top person died at the same time as my father last year. I've kept the relationship going. So now we've been doing business with this company for almost 50 or 60 years. I'm running the business the way my father would have liked me to. And I'm pretty sure that everything will be all right, as long as we maintain quality, look after our customers, and keep our prices down.
Japanese industry hasn't escaped the world recession, and the competition is very tough, both at home and abroad. To keep the orders rolling in, the Kawatas constantly have to update their equipment. They've just won 2 new orders, one from Italy for sunglass lenses, another, which is really important to them, for 100,000 lenses for the latest Panasonic camcorders. To cope with these orders, though, they had to take out big loans to buy the expensive machinery needed for plastic processing. Going into debt was a risk worth taking.
Well, this sort of thing isn't forced on us, and we've been careful to make sure that the amount we've spent on the new equipment is based upon how we see the future and our estimate of what we can afford to pay back. So long as the business is doing well, we can pay back some of the debts and at the same time take out more loans.
20 kilometers across the sprawl of Osaka City is the place where the Kawata's camcorder lenses will eventually end up. At the top of the region's industrial pyramid, at Panasonic. Here, as with all the other top Japanese electronic companies, the goal is to stay ahead of the competition at all costs. Ahead in the way the companies run and ahead in what it makes. And to do this, it spends fortunes on research and plans things years in advance. Panasonic's next pitch for the market is flat vision, a TV set only 12 centimeters deep. There will be many more new products waiting to be released, each one just different enough to tempt the customer to buy. When it comes to the assembly lines, the combination of people and intelligent machines has been tuned to a very high pitch. Robots were first developed in Japan and are now capable of the most delicate tasks. Where people are concerned, the traditionally close ties between management and staff are as strong as ever. They meet frequently, and they talk and really listen to each other. This Japanese way of doing things in industry has been copied all around the world. What Mrs. Yamagami, a supervisor of 8 robots, has to say about this system still echoes the views of the vast majority of Japanese.
It makes my own work a lot easier, and everything runs a lot more smoothly. Once I've put a bit of thought into it, it's good for the company and it's good for me. So, both sides benefit from my trying to improve things.
If it's good for the company, it's good for you. One of the mottos that keeps big Japanese corporations ticking over, and one of the many things that makes them rather special. From exercises in the tea break to multi-million-pound research programs that look far into the future. And no matter how big or rich the company, around the back is the down-to-earth side of the operation. For 24 hours a day, the boxes of vital bits and pieces arrive from the city's small workshops on their way into some of the world's most advanced high-tech goods. What we've seen so far is really a sort of supply line for the electronics industry operating in Osaka Bay. The line starts with the import of a raw material, like oil. The oil goes to the petrochemical works on the waterfront, which produces plastic. The plastic goes to the workshop area in Osaka, where the small companies turn it into components and send them on to the electronic giants like Panasonic. And then, if you follow the network on from there, exports will take it to no less than 160 countries throughout the world where Panasonic goods are sold. Out in Osaka Bay, there's another part of the region's industrial scene still on view, but only just. There's not much old industry like this left in Japan. All this area is owned by Nippon Steel. Demolition of the steel works started 10 years ago. Much of the plant was just too far gone to modernize. Many of the workers are still nostalgic about the old days.
There was a big blast furnace over there where you can see the remains, and there was a great pile of iron ore where we're standing now. The raw materials were taken and carried up to the top by belt conveyor. And then, right next to it, boiling water was pouring out, with sparks flying all over the place. I was really disappointed when they closed it down. It was the time when the furnaces were in their best condition. There were no problems. We kept on surpassing our previous production records. It seemed such a waste to destroy them. Eventually, this will be a vacant lot, and they're going to build on it. I would like to be involved in some way while I can still work.
But in Japan, the end of an industry doesn't always mean the sack. These young men from Nippon Steel are part of the new generation of technocrats who are taking the company into new activities to replace steel making. Tetsuya Shimizu and his colleagues are working on one of the company's latest schemes to set up new businesses. Their speciality is working on the high-tech frontiers of robots. Switching people within a company from one job to another is very much a Japanese way of keeping people in work and coping with industrial change. Even in a company with a 100-year history of making steel, people are now well and truly moving down the high-tech road.
My section is developing automation for factories for some of our clients. We're working out ways of designing systems where robots take the place of human beings.
Tetsuya is working on the design of a robot system that will move boxes around conveyor belts in factory warehouses, so that the right parts can be sent to the right place at the press of a button.
Technology is advancing all the time. Each branch of technology has its own specialists. But the important thing is how to make use of it and make sure that all the specialists work together towards a common goal. We're working towards the sort of integrated system which uses technology from several different fields, not just electrical or mechanical, but a combination of both.
Japan's huge commitment to high-tech is now beginning to have an effect on the look of the landscape in a big way. Way outside of Osaka City, in no less than 15,000 hectares in the Kansai countryside, land is being cleared for new so-called science cities. So far, it's only the first buildings that have been put up, but eventually there will be 11 sites for research centers paid for by leading Japanese corporations. The job of science cities will be very straightforward: to make sure that Japan's high-tech stays ahead of the rest of the world. This man isn't suffering from a strange disease. He's part of an experiment to develop a new form of long-distance communication. It's a kind of virtual reality which allows one person not only to see and speak to somebody else halfway around the world, but it also enables both of them to handle a computerized image of an object as though it were real. But no matter how high the high-tech becomes, it will still be up to the small businesses to make the necessary components. Does Mr. Kawata think the small companies will be able to carry on, as they've always done?
I think personal relations have become weaker in Japanese companies. There aren't so many people taking over family businesses now. In Japan, we have jobs that are called the 3D jobs: dirty, difficult, and dangerous. Young people are turning away from these types of jobs, and we now have foreigners coming into Japan to do them. I think it will be more and more difficult for a business to find someone in the family to take over.
In Japan, that well-known saying, "the old survives alongside the new," really does come completely to life. Yet in this mixture of lifestyles, there's little doubt about which one is winning. One of the best reminders of this is a spectacular daily event during the working week: knocking off time in any one of Japan's enormous cities. It's almost like a celebration of the fact that the modern side of life is taking over. As the look of Japan becomes more modern, it's also getting more youthful. Traditionally, young people stayed very much in the background. Not anymore. Those who may well have benefited most from Japan's economic success are people in their early 20s. Jobs are still fairly easy to come by, and the pay is usually good. The message seems to be, spend it while you can. If one had to choose just one person who represents this modern side of Japan today, it could well be Atsuko Yoshikawa, a young, successful fashion designer and a member of that very small but fast-growing group of people, professional women who are making it under their own steam. The changes facing the young Japanese are something Atsuko has understandably given a lot of thought to.
I think young people today, compared with the way their parents were, spend too much time on themselves. I think the biggest reason behind all of this is that families are becoming smaller, and the grandfather and grandmother no longer live with the family. Young people are spending more money on themselves. Before, money was being put aside or saved, but now, once they start to work, they want to spend the money they earn straight away. In that sense, I think young people are actually releasing their stress by spending money.
Yet in spite of all the new money and lavish things to spend it on, Atsuko, like millions of others, still faces the harsh fact that home is a small, cramped place. Even for her, all that's affordable is one room. Working, eating, cooking, sleeping, all happen inside the same four walls. The bathroom is separate, but only just. The reason why city dwellers find themselves faced more and more with this situation has a lot to do with Japanese geography, human and physical. Wealth has come so quickly and the cities have grown so fast that the country is running out of space. Flat land is so scarce that 63% of the people live on only 3% of the land area. In some spots, there are 10,000 people living on each square kilometre, and it's an extremely long way from one piece of open space to another. It can cost up to £9,000 to become a member of a tennis club. Land is scarce, and because of that, extremely expensive. There are parts of the cities where prices are so high that people have just 4.5 square meters of floor space each at home, 8 times less than the average household in Britain. Cities with no room to move and nowhere to go. Basic Japanese geography, basic Japanese problem. And like many other major problems in Japan, there is often a major project afoot to try and solve it. In and around Osaka and Kobe, the two main cities in Kansai, the region we're featuring in this series, the scheme that's underway involves nothing less than major surgery. To make new space, new land is being made in the sea itself, in Osaka Bay. It's changing the very map of the area and remaking the landscape. The new land is being used for many different purposes. One of the largest blocks will soon become the country's #2 international airport. 5 kilometers out to sea, away from built-up areas, it'll be able to operate 24 hours a day. Finding space like this on the mainland for a new airport would have been an impossible task. In Kobe, already one of Japan's busiest ports, some of the new land has been used to expand the quaysides that handle container ships, the vessels that deliver the country's exports to the rest of the world. In Kobe too, the new land, still being made, now runs for a distance of 7 kilometers out from the old coastline. The area that's supplying all these enormous quantities of earth lies a short distance away beyond the mountains behind Kobe City. Just here, there once stood a sizable hill, 250 meters high. It's vanished into the jaws of diggers and bulldozers. Around 1 billion cubic meters of rock and soil have been removed. From the excavation site, the material is transferred to a conveyor belt and taken 15 kilometers across country to the sea. The last leg of the trip is by barge. Once the barge has reached the spot where the new land is being made, it dumps its load. This operation is repeated tens of thousands of times until finally the soil and rock from the disappearing hill build up and break through to the surface. One of the latest chunks of new territory stands offshore from the city of Kobe. 8 years ago, it looked like this. 26 years ago, like this. Now, these areas of brand new land have become a planner's dream, empty spaces on which to build something totally from scratch. In overcrowded Japan, a rare opportunity indeed. Rokko Island is a new town built on one of the many blocks of reclaimed land along the Kobe waterfront. A long time before the town was even finished, there was an enormous waiting list of people wanting to move in. Names were put into a ballot box, and those that came out first got their wish. Sumiko and Akio Hashimoto are one of the lucky couples. Compared to life in the crowded city of Kobe, where they moved from, their Rokko Island flat is very spacious. They have 2 good-sized rooms for a family of 3, and a room to spare which can sleep at least 2 other children. Their 2-year-old son was born a short time after they moved to the new flat.
Milk. Milk. Ringo juiceよ.
The move the Hashimotos made across the bridge from the mainland to the new island wasn't that big in terms of distance. But in every other respect, this short step from old to new Japan was a big change.
Because this place was planned, I think everything is more spacious, such as the roads and railway station. But the mainland does have the old things, so I think both have good and bad points.
I like being able to see the beautiful surroundings when I go for a walk on my days off. As you can see, there are very few cars around here. So we can even leave our child to play by himself, and falling down is the only thing that can happen to it. so we don't have to worry.
The good points are the schools, the hospitals and the shopping centres that are nearby. The railway station is convenient too for commuting. The bad points here are that everything is new. I wish there were some old things left. For instance, in Japan we've got temples and shrines and other old places. But there aren't any here, and my child hasn't seen them.
It's not only the move from the mainland that's been a big change for the Hashimotos. They've had to face up to another big issue that concerns more and more Japanese. The tradition of the wife staying home to raise the children and look after the house while the husband goes to work is disappearing fast. Fathers in particular are having to do things they never did before, like taking the children to school. What lies behind this is a huge increase in house prices in recent years. Now 2 jobs are needed to pay the family bills.
Actually, with just my income, I can't support the family and make the payments on a home. So we decided to try and do it with both of us working and saving our money, without the help of our parents. And then, if we were both working, we thought we'd be sharing our responsibilities when it came to things around the house and looking after our child. And that would be good too.
Yet once a family has made the big decision that both father and mother have to go out to work, that the chores are shared, and that the child goes to a nursery, it takes some getting used to.
When I first went back to work, I cried. And on Sunday nights, when I knew I had to go to work the next day, I cried again.
Inland from Kobe and the new islands in the sea, the remaking of the landscape continues. Many of the quarries and excavation sites that sent soil and rock down to the coast are being remodeled. This quarry rim had a flight of steps cut into the side of it. A flight of steps that will eventually have houses on it. Houses that will become part of one of the region's new estates. From excavation sites to housing estates, nothing is wasted. In one place, an excavation site has even become a new town. On another, there is now a leisure centre called Happiness Village. It was built with the help of money from the city of Kobe in response to the fast rising demand for leisure facilities in the Kansai region. The majority of people get only 1 week off a year outside public holidays. So the ability to get away for the odd day to a place which has everything under one roof is highly prized. Takako Nakatsukasa is in her last year of secondary school. She's just returned to Kobe after studying for 2 years in England. Spending time abroad is something that more and more Japanese do every year. Takako has come back to Japan with a different way of looking at her home country, and in particular, the stress that students find themselves under.
It's the pressure. Japanese society has this fixed idea that children should study to get to college, then study for 4 years, and then they go to work. In my school, my teachers keep telling us to study, study, and study. So under these circumstances, you have to. I can't help feeling guilty if I go out and enjoy myself, while what I'm really supposed to be doing is studying for my college entrance exams. I think about the other friends who are at home studying while I am having fun. I just can't help it.
By Japanese standards, that is indeed a surprising thing to say. Traditionally, work has always been very high on the list of priorities. And it's this respect for work that has been one of the most important reasons for Japan's success. It applies everywhere, from high-tech assembly line to backstreet workshop. Could it be that this cornerstone of Japanese life is crumbling away? Do young people look ahead to a different Japan, one with more of a balance between work and leisure?
Our parents put in extra work when they don't really have to, but our generation will only do the work that's necessary. When the working day's finished, that'll be that.